This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, back from Dallas, a weekend trip to cover the Detroit Lions against the Cowboys. We're going to talk all about it, the trip, the experience at Jerry's World. The man spared no expense to treat the media like gold. It was unbelievable. Really, in the end, the only way I can describe it is it dwarfs everything I've seen so far in terms of how an owner treats the media. It was legitimately an amazing experience covering the game. It was so similar to the 49ers in that it was the highest of highs, seeing the Lions play well, and then the lowest of lows when you lose the probably the only person that you could afford, the only person that you could not afford to lose on that defense. So we'll talk all about it, but we're going to start today talking about the Detroit Tigers. That was also tough. Tough part about the Dallas trip was Game 5 took place at noon in Texas. And so with a friend, listened to it, and it was just tough because, you know, everybody was counting on Tariq Skubal to handle business and to listen into, you know, that rough, I think, fifth inning where he gave up hits and then eventually the knockout grand slam. It was a bummer. It just never really felt, after they lost Game 4, because it just never really felt to me. I know everybody had confidence. Everybody was really on board and still felt good that the Tigers had a chance. But when you lost the momentum in Game 4, to me, it kind of subconsciously and it basically cognitively hit me too that it was going to be a very, very uphill climb to win. How disappointed were you in Game 5? Do you still look at the season as being successful, even though they really technically, the best way to kind of say it is they flamed out. When they had a legit chance in Game 4, the Tigers flamed out, couldn't punch home the ticket to get to the ALCS.
I think the end was a little bit frustrating because, like you said, they had a chance to really seal the deal in Game 4 here at home. And then you're expecting this team to be scrappy. You're expecting this team to kind of gut Game 5 out. And really and truly, they felt flat. Like, it didn't feel like they had the same juice that they had in the previous 4 games. So Game 5 and just kind of the last couple of innings of Game 4 just really kind of put a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth with how the season ended. I think overall, it was a pretty magical season. This was a team, when you go back to the beginning of June, they had no shot in hell of making the postseason. And then they got hot, and they got extremely hot. They've done something that no other team has ever done in baseball, type of hot. And they were able to win a series, which is good for these young players. And they were able to take another series basically to the limit against Cleveland. And I think what you learned from this run that you had is you've got major limitations. You have limitations in your pitching staff. You've got limitations with your batting order. And if you're going to have a successful run next season, if you're going to be in a similar position, your owner is going to have to pony up some money. Your owner is going to have to go out and get some guys here. Could you imagine what this team would look like if they had a strong bat in the middle of that lineup? Somebody who could drive home runners when you had them in scoring position. Because Jesus Christ, did they ever have runners in scoring position? A lot of times. And how many times did they come up with an offer? A lot of times. This series would have been legit a cakewalk if they would have had just a big bat that could bring runners home. So I think you see what this team needs, which is good, right? Like, it allows you to be able to address what has to be addressed. But I think you can enjoy the season for what it was. It was low expectations and you got a high reward. And it's just one of those things where you look to build on this for next year. But I think there's a little bit of danger in expecting a good season and a team to make the playoffs next year. I had this conversation with my wife. She was like, this was a really fun run, and this was a really good season that they had. She's like, they should definitely be back next year, and they should maybe do some more damage next year, right? And was like, well, let's put a little bit of a pause in this because you've got a general manager who, and look, I might be the only one. I don't know. For some reason, I find Scott Harris very dislikable. When I listen to him in the media, I do not like him. I think he's a little bit arrogant. I think he's a little bit full of himself. I don't like him. I think he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. And then you've got an owner who is a cheapskate. I mean, look at what he's done. You had an $18 million payroll in the playoffs, and you don't want to cut a guy who legitimately, it's statistical. Go look at it. He regularly hurts your team in Javi Baez. Javi Baez costs you about 5 games a season, if not more. You switched Javi Baez out. You put him on IR, and you brought somebody else in. It was basically a 7-game swing in WAR, which is bananas. Like, Javi Baez goes out there and he legitimately costs you games. And you don't want to cut him because you're paying him as much money as you're paying him. It was a bad signing, and you will not save yourself. So I do not think that there is a lot of hope in the expectation that next year is going to be a good season. I think you see what this team needs to do to have a good season and make the playoffs next year. But I feel like you have a general manager who wants to kind of play Moneyball and wants to try to get guys in here on the cheap and do everything on the cheap because he has an owner who doesn't want to spend money. So I am nervous about next season. Look, I love what happened this year, but looking forward to next season, I don't know if you can walk out there and say, yes, this team is going to be playoff bound. Do you think it's safe to expect that good season? Do you think it's safe to expect the playoffs next year with this young core that they have, but glaring holes up and down this roster?
Yes, because look at it like from this perspective, cuz the Tigers are in the position where they have to be fiscally responsible. So it ends up kind of making it so that they know exactly what kind of player they want. Kind of like, let's just say, for example, Chris Ilitch, and it's a dream scenario. He's got all the money in the world. He can just go out there and buy players. That doesn't guarantee success. It gives you more of an opportunity for success.
He does have all the money in the world. He can go out there and buy players. He chooses not to.
But
he's like the 10th richest owner in MLB.
But I'll say this. Listen, the Yankees have spent and spent and spent and spent, and I'm not seeing any World Series titles in
Yankees are on a doorstop of a World Series appearance.
They are. But
you're not helping yourself here. You're not helping yourself.
No, I am helping myself. One, in 15 years because of all the money spent. So what the point is that the Tigers are operating, and we can ask for him to spend all the money in the world. That's clearly would definitely help the cause. It would boost the cause. But knowing that Scott Harris,
I'm asking him to go get players, man. He didn't do squat last offseason.
Listen.
Get a bat. All we asked for last year, we asked for a bat. Yes. That was all we asked for. A bat would have made a monster difference this year.
It would have. But at the same token, Scott Harris now is tasked with evaluating players that will fit the system, knowing that he can't just go out and waste money. So to me, that just gives me more confidence that the players that they do bring in, either they'll be used to flip for other players, or they will be brought in to be productive, because he has to be on point with the evaluation. And look, to be honest, and if you gave Scott Harris bourbon, he'd tell you that this was completely shocking. He probably felt like, they were probably a year or two away from even doing what they did this year. So to me, I don't think the run's over. Now, what you're saying is, how do we jump into the championship conversation? And I'm at a different spot. I'm into, take another step forward in 2025, because I know that the money is not going to be there to get 3 guys that are making $40 million a year. It's just not there. So to me, this gives him all the credibility in the world that it's easy. To me, when you do it like Brad Holmes does it, draft and develop, and the way Scott Harris does it, you get a little bit more credibility. You get a little bit more of a rope to say, whoa, you got this team with a manager that has used his bullpen effectively, has so many arms that, you had a hole. And clearly this season was about, and remember too, because Scott Harris never lied to anybody. He came out the day one and said, this year is about for us to learn who do we want to develop with? Who do we want to go with? And I think clearly you start to know that, probably Torkelson's not a guy you want to go with. Javi Baez, a guy that you're not going to want to go with. And I think that you now fill the starting lineup with another bat or two. it's just not going to be the best of the best guy. Maybe it's a Bregman, maybe it's somebody else, but you're not going to go and just top to bottom stack a roster with free agents. So to me, I'm more confident in this regime right now based on what Scott Harris
think
did.
You're missing what I'm saying. I'm not saying go and stack this roster with free agents. I'm saying go get pieces that fit. I don't need you to spend.
They're going to.
I don't need you to spend $80-90 million, but I need you to go bring guys in who are competent Major League Baseball players who are going to be able to give you runs or be able to get outs in key moments of key games. And that's what you were missing down the stretch here. Like all of the magic and all of the pixie dust and everything great that you got out of your manager just kind of went poof in Game 5 when your Cy Young pitcher basically lobbed a meatball over home plate and it was hit out of the park for a grand slam. You are now in a major hole, and you have nobody on this roster who has the ability to step up to that plate and strike fear in any pitcher across Major League Baseball. Right. And that's what I'm telling you need. You need a guy who is a competent bat who can sit there and drive runs in when you got runners on the pond.
They're going to do it.
And you need somebody else who can help a guy like Tarek Skubal.
Yes.
You can't do what you did in this playoff run. You can't do what you did from June until October over the course of a regular season. You can't have AJ Hinch just trying to manufacture wins by playing bullpen baseball. That is not good for the longevity of your team, and it's not necessarily good for the longevity of the sport. It's cool to see it when it works, and it worked out fantastically. But you have to be able to add at least two pieces, whether it's an arm and a bat, or it's two bats and you've got some arms coming up from your minor league system. You have to be able to add some pieces, and you need to open up that the pocketbook and the checkbook for it. Is all I'm saying.
And I think they will. I think that Scott Harris has earned a little bit of credibility. I think that he's operating within the parameters of what he's been given, and he's done it in a good job. You got to see Jackson Jobe. He looks like, okay, he's got stuff. Stay healthy. You got another piece. Now maybe you go out there, you bring back a Jack Flaherty, you bring back somebody that potentially could be a reliable starter. I do think that the pieces are in place to start to add talent in the way in which clearly now he knows, okay, we need a bat, we need a little bit more reliability with starting pitching. They do know what they need. And I do think that, yes, he's earned the benefit of the doubt that the run that the Tigers are on is just beginning. So to me, my confidence grew as the season went on, because you're like, wait a minute here. They figured out, okay, Javier Baez, they whatever happened, injuries, or they just said, okay, this is a benching, whatever legitimately happened with Javier Baez. He wasn't there. The team took off. They used the skills that they had to maximize exactly what happened. And look, yes, it's frustrating, but clearly they would have got their clocks cleaned by the Yankees. And yes, it sucks that they didn't have as much talent as the Indians, Guardians. They didn't have as much to get there, but they maximized what they could. That's all you can ask for. But you're absolutely right. Right now, and you're absolutely right to be skeptical. You're like, okay, until I see some checks getting written, until I see the next wave of additions that Scott Harris makes, you're skeptical. I'm a little bit more optimistic that the 4 or 5 guys that are going to be rotated in will be positive and help this team. I do expect next year's expectations are ALCS. I think that they can get there with what they got going on, because when you have the best pitcher in the game, that opens things up. And you got one of the best managers in the game, and now you got a couple young hitters that are great. But you're going to need a lot of luck too in the progression of Parker Meadows, Riley Green, because Kerry Carpenter can't do it all by himself, and they came up short. And it sucks, because if you would have had, and this is where it stinks, because Scott Harris it's not his fault. If you would have had Casey Mize and Spencer Torkelson doing what they're supposed to do, now you could have made it maybe a dream run. You could have did it, but you basically got nothing out of those guys. And Spencer Torkelson waited for the worst possible time to get hot. So I am curious. I am definitely very interested, intrigued by what Scott Harris said at his media session. There was a lot of good takeaways. What was your biggest takeaway? I do think that, you know, the biggest thing that kind of frustrated people was he didn't definitively just bury Javier Baez. He kind of left the door to, well, you know, he's got to prove that he belongs here, but we got to find a role for him. I just think people were expecting, like, look, you know, we've announced today that I think that would have been the best thing ever. Just come out there and say, look, we've decided, because technically that's spending money, and that's spending money to send somebody home. we've announced today that Javier Baez, we wish him best in all his endeavors, but we've decided to move forward as an organization. That would have been like, I think you could have done whatever this offseason. Everybody just would have been so happy riding the wave of a good season, and then you cut Javier Baez. I think that would have been
instantly it makes your team better.
It makes your team
it's
better.
Crazy.
It does. So to me, I just thought that he wasn't definitive enough to just whack a guy that's not going to do anything for you. That's not going to help. It's going to hurt the team. So we'll see how that goes. But I did like what he said. He's basically like, look, we got to be calculated in our efforts. We got to find pieces that fit all the parameters of contract, skills, and we got to have a lot of development of the players that are already here. So I thought Scott Harris was professional. He's low key. He doesn't like when he speaks. Doesn't like It's just basically like, here's the facts. Here's how I believe it to be, and this is what's going to happen. And so far, he gets some credibility for getting the Tigers to what they did this year. Improvement. They got to the playoffs and they trounced an Astros team and were within one game of getting to the Final Four. So all in all, it was a nice season for the Tigers, and it gives me a little bit more hope that maybe championship aspirations are just around the corner. They're knocking.
Yeah, so the big thing I took out of it, and look, I think the thing with Javi Baez is the fact that you're considering bringing him back after you've seen what this team was able to do with him not in the lineup really makes me scratch my head. I don't know where you're going to put him, what position you're going to play him at, or how you're going to get really anything out of him. I don't know what role he plays. That locker room seemed to grow and grow so tightly when he was gone. It was one of those things where it was a monster addition by subtraction. So I don't know how you bring him back. I don't know how you fit him in. It could just be word soup because you got it's end of the year. You haven't really gone through all of your end of year meetings. You've got to look at a couple of things. You got to figure some stuff out. Obviously, you got to go. You're looking to add a couple of pieces through free agency. So does it really work out to basically write that check and tell him to go away? Don't know. Not sure. So I'm just going to, at this moment in time, I'm not going to take Scott Harris at his word. I'm just going to think that this is a thinly veiled statement so they can kind of get through things and get on to that next point where he can then reevaluate what Javi Baez will bring to this team and what he will contribute to this team next year. I think Spencer Torkelson is on incredibly thin ice. I do not think Scott Harris likes Spencer Torkelson, which is fine with me because I was one who was screaming Torkelson was a bust beginning of the year. So Scott Harris has a hard-on for Torkelson, and if Torkelson doesn't shape up, he's going to get shipped out very, very quickly. That was something that I took out of that media session. I was like, all right, well, he's basically telling this guy he's got a lot of work to do, and the work that he's done thus far isn't good enough. And I was like, all right, I like that. The one thing that really made me nervous, besides Javi Baez, was when he started talking about the pitching staff. He said that they're looking at arms, they want arms, but it really sounds like instead of going out and adding a couple of arms, he's going to lean first on what they have in their system, which is fine. But I don't know if you have enough pieces in your system to really get you to where you want to be. Look, injuries happen all the time to pitchers. You've seen it. At one point, the Tigers had a very dominant lineup. They had 3 or 4 starters that were incredibly strong. And then all of a sudden, it was down to Tarek Skubal, and that was it. I feel like pitchers and cornerbacks are two things you can never really have too many of because they're always getting hurt. You always need more. So if you can go out and you can hoard some pitching, sign a couple of guys, bring them in. If you got guys who are in your minor league system, continue to let them work, continue to let them develop. If somebody goes down, you can bring them up. And if you can squeeze some stuff out of them and get a couple of wins, I think you're in a better spot. That way, when you get into the postseason, you've got a depth, you've got a girth of arms that you can lean on. So to me, what I took out of it is it sounds like the farmhands and the minor league system will get the nod first. They'll go through, they'll explore every option they have there. And if they feel that they need to add somebody, they will then go to free agency and look to sign a starting pitcher. And that just does not necessarily work for me. It's going to be interesting when we get to the winter meetings. The other big thing he said is, look, we're not really in a rush to make any decisions. We're going to take our time. By the time we get to the winter meetings, we'll kind of have a game plan and we'll have some stuff laid out and we'll be kind of moving and shaking then. So it'll be interesting to see what that game plan is and to see what moves they actually make when they get to the winter meetings.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, man. The Detroit Tigers, man, they really took a squad that was young and inexperienced. Remember, one of the youngest teams in the playoffs, and now you get hope. What's good is you kind of know that the Guardians have veterans, and you recognize, okay, you can kind of start to match up against what they got as well as the teams in your division, because more games at Comerica would probably give you more success, and having an opportunity to enter as a division winner is so much more advantageous. So that's a great carrot to dangle for next year's roster. And I do think that AJ Hinch learned as a manager and continued to grow. And I think that's a big asset for this bullpen, the pitching staff. Chris Fetter hopefully is locked in for the foreseeable future, and this baseball team can take a step. And I understand the skepticism, but for what they did this year, wow, what a historic run. And let's see if it's going to result in some more investment in the squad. Maybe 30. I'm hoping between $30 and $45 million more in investment for this baseball squad with calculated risks, and let's see what happens, and see maybe if the one thing that they didn't do at the deadline was they sold. So what happens at the deadline is if there's some incentive for this baseball team, if they're winning, add more talent at the deadline too. So I'm not going to judge it fully based on the offseason, but I do think that that's going to give a lot of people some real insights into where this team is headed. Unfortunately, got to turn our attention now to something that was such an extreme, bipolar, bittersweet opportunity and experience. Had an opportunity to go to Dallas. It was such a great trip. It was a flight that was smooth sailing. The weather was nice both ways, very light turbulence. Only a 30-minute delay coming back. The flight experience was great through American Airlines. No drama. It was just get on, get off. Now, of course, there were some things with me trying to push the buttons to get my bags checked. I thought my bag was a legit thing that I could stow away, but no, it was far too large. I was like, oh no. So that incurred extra fees to get my luggage checked, which is fine. I mean, it's not a big issue. No scenes were caused by me. But I seen this, man. They don't give you the size requirement to get your stuff on a plane is like, oh no, I can't roll like that. I had to roll a little bit bigger with my suitcase. So, but the flights were great. The people next to me were great. So the Bose the noise canceling headphones served me well. So getting there was great. I was very excited to check out the barbecue because it lives up to the billing. Oh my God, the brisket and the ribs at every place I tried fall off the bone, tender, done right. Like basically the best way to put it is just how there's like 50 different pizza places, there's 50 different barbecues. And it's like every other corner. It's Jack's Barbecue, Link's Barbecue, There's every place. So I tried like 4 different places, all of them, the ribs and the brisket. I was like filled up with protein. It felt good. The weather was nice. So that part of the trip was great. Dallas is nice. It's a nice area. And I was in the Dallas downtown area and Arlington and Fort Worth, kind of that 20, 30-mile stretch of visiting. So the trip part was great. The game part, unfortunately, was crazy. I went there just solely to see Jerry's World. Clearly, it's a bucket list thing. You want to see one of the most talked about and most decorated stadiums in the world, sites of WrestleMania, all big concerts, the big screen. And yeah, it's luscious. It's new, state-of-the-art, modern. No expense spared by Mr. Jerry Jones, and he treats the media like gold. I'm talking about pregame meals that feature prime rib, halftime meals that feature some of the best tasting macaroni and cheese and some shrimp wrap that he had that was just a legitimately outstanding. Dessert for days. It was like 7 big screens on a wall that you can sit down and watch. Serves beer. He just treats everybody like family, and it was just amazing. So that part of it lived up.
You were allowed to drink on the job there at Jerry's World?
I'm allowed. I mean, it's up to everybody's.
Wow.
It's up to everybody's discretion. I mean, not A lot of people took advantage of it after the game, but he does serve beer, and most people are responsible. You're not going to have people like overdoing it. It'll be just one glass. You know what I mean? But he's got 4 kegs in the media room, and you're just like, wow. Fountain drinks for days. 50 different candies that you could pick from, dessert state, like literally it's like you're going to Vegas buffet to eat, and you're just like, wow, it was delicious. Prime rib, one of the best I've ever had. Mac and cheese, one of the best it was just best, creme de la creme. That's the best way to put it. Like, your eyes were just like, wow. That's the whole point I wanted to see. Like, what the hell is this place about? The screening of itself, I would pay to go watch a game if you want to be in an environment. The screen is huge. I know it's not as fun. You want to watch the game on the field, but the screen is so big. You can get an experience with a fan. It's pricey, but to do it once, it's worth it. Jerry's World was crazy. But unfortunately, and the sad part is, it really was. That's my takeaway to intro this. It's the microcosm of life. The highest of highs, the joy of traveling, for me, because I don't do it too often. The joy of seeing something crazy wild, the fun of seeing the Lions whoop their ass was just amazing. Like, it was razzle dazzle. It was dominating. It was let's dance in your crib. Let's, fuck your couch kind of thing. Like, let's come into your house and dance all over it and have a dance party and have a good time with it. All that was great. It was an A-plus offensive and defensive performance, but then it's completely marred by the Aidan Hutchinson injury. It just took the fun, the sales out of everything. That's what it was. The second half, the Lions were up by double digits. It took I had to rewatch the game when I got back in terms of the second half. I barely recall any second half plays because you're writing, you're setting up the content schedule. You're just like, I can't believe this happened. I messaged you and I'm like, I can't believe this just happened. But it was the best way to describe it. It was bittersweet. It was the highest of highs of fun of going into Jerry's World on his birthday and to piss all over his plate. But at the same token, you lose your best player. And, you're the first person I'm sharing this with. I just think that it did to me derail the belief in my mind that they can win the Super Bowl, because I just think that people will say, well, you're discounting the team, and I think that, yeah, the team's good. The team's good enough to win in the playoffs. The team's probably going to add somebody. But if you were just from the perspective of when I was sitting there thinking in the delay, I was thinking, those people that are just like, oh, it's no big deal, we're going to still win. I think that's a little bit disrespectful to Aidan Hutchinson. The man was on a pace for 20 sacks or more. The man was on pace to dominate the league. The man was doing some things that we haven't seen here in Detroit in a long time, getting into the conversation of Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett and getting into the talk of Max Crosby. You had that guy, and now you lost him and Davenport. That really is going to be tough in regards to trying to replace him. So to me, it kind of makes you feel like, man, the Super Bowl now, winning it is going to be the tallest of tall tasks. And I do think that they can get there, but to me, it's tough because my prediction for the year was to get there and lose. And of course, we'd all want to see them win, but this injury was devastating to me. What was your reaction when it happened? Did you have that same bipolar swing of like, man, this is the funnest game to be a part of? But then, because of all the razzle dazzle, giving the ball to Penei Sewell, throwing to Taylor Decker, Skipper lining up out wide, just basically embarrassing the Cowboys. But you lose your best player, and the only player on defense you can't lose. You cannot have, and in a violent, gross way, where everybody on the internet gets to replay it and see his leg snap like a twig. Oh, it was so bittersweet. I just wish that wouldn't have happened. I wish it just would have been high ankle sprain, 2-3 weeks. You get him back and you have hope, but he's gone for the year. I mean, the optimistic talk is crazy. You're not going to just throw the guy into the Super Bowl. I mean, come on.
The dude's got a fucking rod in his leg.
Exactly.
His leg was snapped in half, guys.
Exactly.
You have two bones in that part of your leg, and they cross over. Exactly. He now has one. It's a rod.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, he's not coming back this year.
It's tough.
He'll be back next year. It'll be okay. Everything will be fine. But here's the deal. So while this was going on, right, of course, loving this game because it was vengeance. It was for everything that's ever happened bad in Jerry's World. Because every time you go to Jerry's World, somehow you get jail sexed. Somehow something stupid happens. Somehow you are always on the wrong end of the stick. Something like this happens, right? So I'm watching this game. I'm holding my kid, and I'm feeding her, and I'm excited. I see this happening, and I'm like, oh, no. Oh, no. I just start screaming at the TV. I'm yelling. I'm upset. I was ready to throw my baby outside. I was so furious and pissed off. I was so mad that one of my dogs ran and basically hid underneath her mom because I was yelling and I was using such vulgar language. Yes, I swear in front of my kid. She's 5 months old. She doesn't even know what the hell's going on. If her first word's not fuck, it's going to be tit. It'll be fine. It'll be all right. I'll adjust when I have to adjust. It'll be fine. Anyways, I was pissed, man. I was upset. I was screaming about how whenever we go down to Dallas, something stupid like this happens, how you can't have anything nice in Detroit. Whenever we have something that is supposed to be great, something stupid like this happens. I was furious because this team looked so good. It looked so complete on offense. It looked so complete on defense. And now you just lost your best defensive player. And this is the thing that I don't think people understand. Aidan Hutchinson isn't just an edge rusher. Aidan Hutchinson is basically your defensive line. This guy not only leads your team, he leads the league in sacks. He leads the league in pressures. He leads the league in the amount of sacks that he accounts for your team. Like, he has more sacks himself than everybody else on your team does. This guy is a game changer. You don't have another pass rusher on this team. Bringing in Marcus Davenport was whatever. Here's the thing. Marcus Davenport's always hurt, so it's no big surprise that the guy was hurt by game 2. It's what it is, right? Brad Holmes did a poor job of helping insulate Aidan Hutchinson. And here's the thing. Aidan Hutchinson was that guy this year in the NFL. He was the dude. You say, who's the best edge rusher in the league right now? It's Aidan Hutchinson. Yeah, Max Crosby's great. I love Max Crosby. I think Max Crosby is a dog. I would love to have him here. Aidan Hutchinson was better. Aidan Hutchinson was the best defensive end in the league right now. His stats back it up. The way he plays backs it up. He is the heartbeat of that defense. He is the leader of that defense. Yeah, I know he doesn't wear the green dot, but he is the leader of that defense. He is the dude who is causing havoc up front that is making your secondary look better. He is the reason why Levi has sacks. He is the reason why McNeil has sacks. He is the reason why these guys are getting the production that they're getting, because he's forcing double teams, and this guy was having a historical season. This guy was going to push, and he was going to possibly break the all-time sack record by Michael Strahan. This guy was doing it. He was that dog. He was having a Pro Bowl, he was having an all-pro season. He was just rewriting record books this year, and now he's gone. He is the most important part to your defense because he is the only pass rush that you really have. And now you've got to figure out some other way to manufacture it. So your young cornerback, Terrion Arnold, who gets 1,000 flags thrown against him. Guess what? He's going to get 1,000 more now. Your safeties who are able to turn the ball over at an incredible clip with Kirby Joseph. Those are probably going to dry up because the quarterback's not going to be under duress, isn't going to have happy feet, and isn't going to throw the ball towards Kirby Joseph. Like, these things are all this whole thing with this defense. The defense that we've been praising him and we've been raving about, it's all going to change now. You as coaches on that Lions team now have to figure out who is going to step in, and there is nobody who's going to replace his production. There's nobody. You can go bring Max Crosby in. Pay out the ass, get Max Crosby, or go ahead and make a trade for Myles Garrett. These guys aren't going to replace the production that this guy is giving you right now. They're just not. It's not going to happen.
Especially when the defense kind of is built around it, like the puzzle. You know what I mean? It was kind of, opportunities in which blocks could go a different way. The addition of DJ Reader helped a little bit. So it's a big loss, man. It's devastating.
It is unreal.
Yeah.
To see something like this happen and to have something like this happen. It is incredibly frustrating, and it is devastating as a fan. It is devastating to this team. Now, look, there is a team that is well insulated enough to kind of overcome this, and you could kind of see it in the locker room if you watched Dan Campbell's post-game speech in the locker room where he's handing out game balls and stuff like that. I think this team will rebound. This team will do whatever it's got to do to win football games. I think now a heavier burden falls on this offense that looked incredible and has ratcheted up a couple of notches from last year. But this defense is just not going to be the same. And I don't know if there's a guy out there that you can trade for. I don't know if there are pieces on this defense that you can move around. initially when this was going on, you and I were texting, and I was like, well, maybe you could move Jack Campbell up to the line and just kind of have him go and get the quarterback. But I don't even know if that works, because that's going to kind of be something a little bit unfamiliar to him. I mean, you're going to have to kind of do different parts of your defense now to kind of facilitate this. So I don't know. They've got pieces. It's going to be trying to figure out that puzzle. Nobody's going to give you the production that he has had. Nobody in the league is going to give you that production. Do I think they'll make a trade? I think possibly they'll trade, but I don't think it's going to be anything that is crazy and mind blowing. Like Max Crosby, it's not happening, right? Myles Garrett, as much as I would love it, I don't think it's happening. I definitely don't want Riddick here. Like I don't want that guy here. So you're going to bring guys in off of practice squads. You might make a small trade for a guy. You're going to try to move different dudes around to get some pressure off the ends, but nobody's replacing that production. How do you see them trying to get the most out of what they got? In what direction do you think they go? Do you think they just bring somebody in off the practice squad like they've already done? Or do you think there's a name out there that they can go grab?
Yep. And so for those that didn't know, a couple days ago, the Lions did bring in from the Bengals. He's a 7th rounder. It's more of a project, but he's on the active roster now, Isaiah Thomas. He's a guy that's been big size, but somebody that's just been, underutilized, and I think they view as somebody that can potentially fill in as an option for the size and the way in which they want to envision the pass rush. But as you were speaking, look, it's not a splash move. I do think that's the case. Maybe you look at a Trey Hendrickson as a splash, but I do think that they didn't make it right away because the cost is the highest. It's like basically the general manager's like, oh, you lost your best player? I'm going to need 2 firsts. Oh, okay. So then Brad Holmes is like, okay, I can't go into this doing that. So he's going to wait till the deadline. Maybe the Raiders are even more desperate if they keep losing. The Bengals, you basically have to hope that the teams that you want the players from, they just go into the tank and do not win another game, that they just keep losing. Maybe it's a Darius Smith. I agree. Reddick is not a culture fit. So here's the thing, and it gives me a little bit more confidence as you were talking. It seems like as you talk, I gaining more of a stronger opinion on the opposite side. I look at it like you lost one player in Aidan Hutchinson, but you potentially have 6 different options to try and fill that void. You're not going to fill it. It's going to be different. The defense is going to shift. I do think they're going to adapt. They're going to maybe even do more of a bend, don't break. You got to remember too, the back end is doing some crazy things on defense. They are crazy. So you look at it and you say, okay, Hutchinson's gone. He's wiped away. That production's gone. But you now have to expect Lee McNeil to do just a little bit more. You got Isaac Ukwu, who's going to develop and have an opportunity probably to get up to the active roster. You need James Houston to snap into gear and to figure it out on 3rd down when they call.
What is his deal? Can you give us an update on what's going on with him? Because last week we talked about guys who were disappointing. He was a guy who he's been so off the radar. I even forgot about him. Exactly. Going into it, I wanted to talk about him, but I was just like, this guy, he has become just a waste of space. Yes. What is the deal with him?
The injury was worse than, for him in terms of development and the way in which his confidence, it's just been a situation in which, his total development, I think the whole picture, the injury derailed his development. He's not the same player that he was before the injury. His confidence is a little bit lower because he's been inactive. He's getting outdone by other guys. So you just got to find avenues to put him in the best spot. Like, look, it's just, here's your 6 plays. I need you to win 4 of them. Just win. And so you got to, he's the 6th option. But, you got James Houston. You got basically the 3 guys that are going to be tasked right now are Ukwu, Josh Pascal, and Levi Onwuzurike. Whatever Isaiah Thomas can bring you, you hope that, similar to what the Tigers did. They just got, when they went to the bullpen and went to a bullpen starting rotation, people were like, this isn't going to work. And then they all balled out. Maybe this Isaiah Thomas can be somebody that in this system, they look and say, okay, we can do some things situationally. So to me, I look at it like, okay, the defense is going to change. My expectations are a little bit lowered for them. And now, as you were speaking, and as I talked to Lions fans at an event in Dallas, I said, you know what? This offense can be a strength. You just add at the deadline to the offense. Another wide receiver, another running back, another lineman, depth, whatever you need to fortify. Because this offense, when it's clicking, can go apeshit crazy. That's why before Devontae Adams was traded to the Jets, literally because 2 minutes before he was officially traded, I said, just go get Reddick, go get Devontae Adams in a symbolic all-in nature move. But if your offense is that good, you know what? In a situation where we all want them to go all in on defense, just add some more weapons. Maybe another tight end that's out there that's on a practice squad that can be a receiving tight end that is out there or can give Goff another opportunity. Somebody on the offensive line that can be a depth person that you can slot in there to open more holes, because that offense looked unstoppable against the Cowboys. Now, clearly the Cowboys defense was struggling, but I say that if you just get 10% better on offense, maybe that offsets the defense. Basically now the defense is just kind of like, please hold on, don't cost us the game. And the first big test, it's going to be great. Literally, clearly we don't want no one to get hurt. But now that you have this situation, the first test that's going to showcase what the Lions are about is you're going into Minnesota on the road. So this will showcase what you got if you're able to continue that success in the red zone against Minnesota with Darnold and Jefferson and Jones and what they got going on. That'll give you kind of a good litmus test to be able to say, okay, no, Isaiah Thomas probably not the guy that's going to do some things, or these four guys, no, we got to make a bigger splash. So the good thing is time will give Brad Holmes more of a chance. To me, I don't see big splash. I don't see Crosby or Garrett. I see, like what Dan Campbell said on the radio, role player, somebody that they trust, a veteran, so that probably puts it into a 30-year-old range. So somebody else that they can trust, that they believe is somebody that can come in, just a little bit better than when they, at the deadline, announced it was Donovan Peoples-Jones, and it was like, no. And it sucks too, for Isaiah Thomas, because the first thing people say is, you brought in a 7th-rounder with 1 career sack to replace Aidan. Most people believe that when you watch the film, Thomas is more kind of the replacement for Davenport. So he's more of that body type. I do think they'll get an athletic person that can come in and rush the passer as well. So just patience. I know we're all still feeling raw and hurt that Aidan Hutchinson had his leg broken. And to me, cause real fast before we talk about the Super Bowl aspirations and what it means on the bigger scale, I'm not a Michigan fan, but I just totally don't recall him breaking the other leg. Like, did he miss the season, or did he miss a big chunk of time with the other leg being broken? Because everybody's talking. I looked at it and I said, I don't recall. I recall Hutchinson being injured. I just don't recall the severe nature of having his other leg broken and realizing, okay, if that's what's happened, he's done this before in rehab, a severe injury. What happened in college, and was it that severe of a nature? I don't recall the injury, or I haven't had the time to look at it, but what the heck happened to him in college? I know he was injured. I just didn't know the severity of it, and it sounds like, did he miss a big chunk of time in his collegiate career? Because I just remember the growth that he had against Michigan State and the stuff that he did his senior year.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact injury. I do remember him getting hurt in college, and I do remember him missing a large part of the season. But I do not remember what it was that took place when he was in college. I don't remember even what year it was. The thing about Aidan Hutchinson, right? So his dad is a fantastic emergency room doctor, right? Like his dad's a great guy too. I've had some dealings with him because I used to work at the hospital that his dad worked at. He's fantastic, and his dad knows medicine, and his dad knows what he's going to need to do to get better. So I don't think that there is necessarily anything to worry about as long as the surgery was performed well and there's no infection. I think he will rebound from this and he will be fine. The expectation that he is going to come back this year, I think that is far-fetched. I don't think that's going to be possible. Like I don't put anything past this guy, right? Because he's a guy who goes in and he does work and he looks to work. But I don't think he is going to be able to get back onto the field and play at the level that you need him to play at coming off of an injury like this. So I just don't see that happening. So I find the people who kind of speak in those very, very for sure tones about that. I don't necessarily think that's the best thing to do. You know what I'm saying? And look, yeah, it was a leg fracture. This happens in the game against Indiana. He had to have surgery on it. I don't think it was the same exact type of thing, but it was a leg fracture. So similar, but this one you could see it looked like if you took a pool cue and threw it in a sock and then waved it around. That's what his leg looked like at when that injury took place.
Yeah,
this was
very severe.
Go ahead.
Yeah, very severe and just traumatic. So yeah, the good thing is that these situations are going to be monitored at the highest level. He's still young, so it's unfortunate, for it to happen at this time. But do you think it derailed? Like, do you sit here today and say, team's still good enough, they can add one or two pieces? Because it's crazy to think about. They still have so much talent on offense and so much emerging talent on defense. It's crazy. Is it too soon? Do you still think this team can win the Super Bowl without Aidan Hutchinson, no matter what they do?
I think this team can win. Look, so very similar to you, right? Initially, my reaction was, well, shit, there goes your Super Bowl aspirations. And then you sit back, you kind of cool down a little bit, and you're like, no, this team has a lot on defense. Now it's young, and the formula for getting the wins on defense is going to have to change. You're not going to get the production that you got up front. So where is that going to have to come from, right? So those guys on the inside of that D line are going to have to be a little bit more forceful. Your linebackers are going to have to get a little bit more involved. Your secondary is going to have to play a little bit more stout. And again, young secondary. It's a young football team. They're going to get better as the season goes on. And to kind of help offset that, you've got an offense that I think just hit a dramatic leap forward. I thought what we had before the bye was great. What you've seen on this past Sunday was unreal. It was like hitting a 6 times multiplier. Like, these guys are so well oiled. The offense is so much better than it was a year ago, and I didn't think it could get that much better a year ago. So I think you have the pieces offensively to get into the big game, right? To get into the Super Bowl. When you get there, you're going to need your defense to figure it out. And you're going to need your defense to make a stop or two, maybe even 3. I think you go out, you're a little bit aggressive at the trade deadline. I'm not talking Max Crosby aggressive, where you're giving up multiple first-round picks and second-round picks to get a guy. But you go out and you get a little bit aggressive. You get a guy. If things keep happening with Cincinnati, was it Trey Hendrickson? It's a guy that I was opining about when the 12 o'clock or the 1 o'clock game was going on, and I was watching or when I was 2 weeks ago when the 1 o'clock game was going on, and I was watching Cincinnati play. I was telling the wife, I was like, this is the guy that we want to put him alongside Aidan Hutchinson. It's got to be crazy. These guys will just go to Volver quarterbacks. It'll be great. And Cincinnati keeps struggling. They got no reason to hold on to him. You make a trade for him, you give up maybe a 3rd-round pick. Maybe you give up a 4th and a 5th. I don't know. You can go get a guy like that, and he can offset. Again, you're not going to match Aidan Hutchinson's production, but you can go out there and you can get a guy who can kind of help offset some of what you're losing. I think they still have a good enough team to get into the Super Bowl and to play for the Super Bowl. I don't know if they'll be able to win it, but they should have enough to get there. Because if you look at the landscape, right? San Francisco dealing with a shit ton of injuries, and they are not the team we thought they were going to be. Chicago, just looking at the NFC North, Chicago is going to get better, and by the time you go to play them, they're going to have a lot of things figured out. I still think you can beat them. You look at Green Bay. I think Green Bay you could split with. Green Bay is a very talented team. I think they need to invest a little bit more in their offensive line. So if you can get to the quarterback and disrupt some of that, you'll be okay. They'll definitely test you in your secondary because they've got a ton of wide receivers. The big game is this game this week against Minnesota, because Minnesota has a really potent offense with Sam Darnold, who looks like he has hit a career renaissance, and you've got a really stout defense. So this week, going to be a bit of a challenge, and you're going to learn a lot about your team. But you've already beat Seattle, who's a good team. Washington is a bit of a surprise right now in that NFC East. After that, look, I think Philly's a bunch of frauds. I think the Giants are whatever the Giants are going to be. And then you've already dismantled Dallas. So whatever's whatever there. You go to the West. 49ers, like we said, in shambles. You already taken care of Seattle. You already took care of Arizona, and you've already beaten the Rams. So you've already handled the AFC West. And so then you look at the South, and look, Buccaneers beat you. Close game. I think you're a better team now than you were when you played them. Saints seem like they're a bit of a mess. Atlanta, I don't trust. And Carolina is Carolina. So I think you have a clear path to get to the Super Bowl. You just got to grind it out, and you just got to get some production from a couple of guys and retweak your defense a little bit. But I think Super Bowl, the aspiration of getting to the Super Bowl is still there. I just don't think it is a push-button win when you get there.
No doubt. And then I think that, the offense is going to need to step it up and do their thing, especially this week against the Vikings. How are you seeing the matchup? To me, it's simple. You got to find ways to get Sam Darnold to be Sam Darnold in the bad sense. You got to get turnovers. You got to give him looks and confuse him. You just can't let Justin Jefferson take this over and make it a crazy thing. And Aaron Jones, I think that the Lions have a chance to score a bunch and have an opportunity to do some things. The problem is, though, Flores is probably sitting, as we're recording this, with his pen looking at film going, boys, if you smack around Jared Goff, we win this game by a lot. And I think he's going to dial up as much pressure as humanly possible into Jared Goff. And Brian Flores is no joke. Like, Brian Flores is one of those guys that is aiming probably right now to take Goff out of the game. So you better find ways, Ben Johnson. Like, you're not going to be running 5 trick plays against this defense. Brian Flores is not having that. And your guys will get punched in the mouth doing stuff like that. So to me, it's going to be a lot about, I think the secret weapon this week is Gibbs. Screen game, get him involved in the intermediate passes, quick, him and St. Brown. And then you got to pick your spot to when you're going to launch it deep to Jamison Williams. But I think that, Gibbs, Montgomery, St. Brown this week, and combined with Laporta, when you can get them open, I think that gives them a chance. You can't have these 7-step drops because I think that the Vikings can do some things and can handle business. And the Vikings, I think, have the edge defensively in terms of the pressure, but I think the Lions might have the bigger edge to get them the win. So I think it's going to be a nice contest, knock them out, drag them out. But I think the Lions have a chance to get this one if they can keep the score, first team to 24 wins it. And I think the Lions get there. I think they win 24-21.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. The game plan for this game has to be
quick.
Make Sam Darnold the old Sam Darnold, right? Make that offense a little bit one-dimensional and make it go through Sam Darnold and make him skittish in the pocket. And you're going to have to figure out what you're doing on defense. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to get that pressure there. So put some pressure on him. If you can somehow take Justin Jefferson out of this game, whether you got to bracket him or you got to line a couple of guys up, I think that could also play dividends to really making Sam Darnold struggle a little bit. That's going to be his first read. That's going to be his first option, is trying to get it to Justin Jefferson. If you can take that away, it makes his life that much harder. And then it's really protecting Jared Goff. So I think you're right. Screen game will be important. Maybe line Jahmyr Gibbs up in the slot. And have him run a couple of short patterns and kick the ball out to him. I think David Montgomery is going to play a big role as well, because running the ball, it really helps take some of that pressure off of the quarterback and keeps him clean. And you know how powerful that offensive line can be, and they can just road grade you. So I think the run game specifically is going to be incredibly important in the win in Minnesota. And then I think if you can somehow make Sam Darnold a little bit one-dimensional and take away his initial read of Justin Jefferson, you're going to stand a much better chance of slowing that offense down and really capturing the win. I think the Lions win. I think this is going to be a tougher game than a lot of people initially thought. I think it's going to be a tougher game than people might even want to admit. But I see the Lions winning. I think it'll be something like 27-24.
Yes, get the win. You got to knock off the Vikings, because if not, you're putting yourself in a tough spot, and going on the road might be different this time around in the postseason. And cuz it's crazy to think about, but starting to get a little worried about Tampa Bay. Like, they got some Lions magic going on there. I got Baker Mayfield on a 5-1 fantasy team that's on the bench, and I have to consider playing him. I mean, this week's tough. He's playing Baltimore, but he's scoring 40 fantasy points every single week. The passing attack in what they've been able to do, they've already beaten you. So pay attention to what the Buccaneers are doing. They're emerging as a team. And then you got Washington. If Jaden Daniels, continues to do what he's doing, don't tell me if the Lions go out west don't tell me if the Lions go out east and play the Commanders on the road, that it's not going to be as easy as it was to advance like you did. So you got to get as much wins as possible. You need these teams coming in. And I think that's kind of interesting. I kind of now just thinking off the cuff here, man, the Lions and Commanders in a playoff game at Ford Field, bro, that would be something because it's a nice test. It'll really pit a young gun quarterback that's lighting up the league. Oh my God. But let's just focus on the Vikings and the challenge that Justin Jefferson is going to present. Please, no gritties. Let's have a no gritty approach for the Detroit Lions defense and let's give the defense credit to not give up a touchdown in Jerry's world. Cause I recommend it. Go down to Texas. It's a good trip. 2 hours, pretty fast. You get down there. It was a pretty smooth trip and nice weather. And it was nice to see all the cowgirls doing their thing and all the cowboys in their hats. Nobody was open carrying, so that was good. It was a safe trip. Everybody was having a good time. And Jerry's world is a palace. So Dallas, not a bad place. Interesting town, interesting place, and nice airport to get you in and out pretty fast from Detroit. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure if you've agreed or disagreed, feel free. Even though some of you are not reading the timestamps on my comments, you're responding to comments from 3 days ago saying, well, the Lions already have a plan. They signed they signed Isaiah Thomas. It's like, did you know I asked that question the second that Aidan Hutchinson went down? So I'm not behind on the news, guys. You have to read the timestamp. If you're going to comment 3 days later, just answer the question. Read the timestamp. There is no way on earth at Detroit Podcast is behind on the news. So I'm getting all the funny people on Twitter answering questions from 3-4 days ago. I ask questions every single day. Every single day there's a water cooler talking point to kind of talk and engage. And so please just really answer the question. It's really simple. Answer the question. It's all it's intended for, because when you get into asking and analyzing my purpose, it just gets weird because you're not making any sense. I ask the questions because I want to talk about it. That's why I post stuff. And I ask stuff pretty much the moment it happens when it comes to our thought. That's kind of the idea of sports. So feel free, hit us up. You might get a snarky reply from me, but if you answer the question, most of the time you're going to get a respectful interaction. But when you get into calling me or questioning why, it's self-explanatory at this point. Why are we talking about Aidan Hutchinson on the podcast? Why are we talking about the Super Bowl? Why are we talking about which teams we'd like to play in the playoffs? Because this is the stuff that just pops in my head at the moment. And the thesis has always been, whatever we think, we post it with no filter. And that's why you've made us and kept us in the mix, because we're uncensored, unfiltered, having a good time as friends and family, talking about the Detroit sports scene. I can't wait to do it again. It's the best part of my week. I look forward to coming back and breaking everything down with my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. I can't wait to do it again on the next episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.